Hey, what's going on guys? Welcome back to another video. In this video I'll be covering the basics of lighting and there's really a few things you need to know and I'm going to cover them today and it's going to get you started when it comes to lighting your scenes in 3D and it kind of relates to any software you use. It doesn't have to be Cinema 4D and same thing for the renderer. It doesn't have to be physical. It can be Arnold, it can be Octane, it can be Redshift, it can be whatever you want. So I'm just going to show you the basics of lighting and let's just get started. So this is the scene that I have and I used 3-point lighting, but I'll probably cover that in my next video. So let me just close that off. Alright, so there's a few ways to creating lights in Cinema 4D. You have your create tab and you can go down to lights and you have your lights right here. Or right next to the camera icon you have your light bulb icon, so you can just click here and hold and you have your different options here. So let me just turn that off so I can put it close to me and give you an example here. So you have a few different options for your lights. You have your Omni light, spotlight, target light, area light, IS light, infinite light, and sound light. So the only option or the only light you have to worry about is area light. This light can get 97% of time your job finished. You need to worry about the Omni light, the spotlight. That's kind of just extra. And especially if you're starting out, just stick with area lights. They're really good. You have a lot of different controls. You have a lot of different options, and the effects as well. So just stick to area lights when you're first starting out. So let me just create a light. So you just hold, and here you go. We created a light in our scene. Well, I'm just going to delete this light and go into one of my lights that I created and go over the few options that you have and the only options they need to worry about basically. So let me just go back into this front light or our main light in the scene. So this is our first light, our sphere, as you can see, and it's acting as our main light. So going back into options. So the only three tabs, you have all kinds of different tabs here as you can see, but the only three tabs you have to worry about is your general tab, your details tab, and your shadow tab when you first start starting out. Don't worry about it too much, playing around with caustics, noise, and so on, your lens effects. Just stick to the basics and it's going to give you really nice and even lighting in your scenes and also a really nice result. So the way I think about these three tabs are, the general tab is your intensity, your detail tab is your shape of the light, square, rectangle, sphere, circle, what kind of shape is your light. So this is your details tab, and your general is kind of like how intense you want it to be, what color, do you want it to be contributing to the speculars or the highlights on the objects, do you want it to be contributing to the diffuse of the object, and so on. And the last tab is the shadow. And these are the three tabs you have to worry about: your general, your detail, and your shadow. So intensity, shape, and shadow. So let me just go over the options one by one and give you a quick rundown to get you started. So you have your color, and obviously it controls the color of the light. So you can set it to anything you want, and that's about it for the color. Your intensity is obviously how strong you want your light to be. So as you can see, if I bring it down, the light is not emitting any light, and if I bring it back to 100%, the light is emitting 100% around my sphere. And you can go beyond 100%, just keep that in mind. And if it's working for you, you can always crank it up, and you have full control of how intense you want your light to be. In your type, you have your different types of lights. It's the same thing as you see in this tab right here. It's just if you made a mistake and you want to switch your type, you can always go between different types of lighting. But like I said, just stick with area lights. They're the best and give you the best results. Just because you have all these options here doesn't mean you have to use them. In our next tab, you have shadow. And you have a few different options here, but I would suggest using area shadows. They're the most physically accurate and gives you the most realistic results. And when I give this scene a render, you'll see what I'm talking about. In the next few options here, we have no illumination, which is basically turns off your light. Your ambient illumination, which gives you the ambient light instead of your normal area light. We have these three options right here are really important to control your lighting, diffuse, specular, and global illumination, and it gives you full control if you want to be, contributing just to the speculars, just the highlights on the object. If you want to contribute just to the diffuse of the object or your overall lighting, or if you want to be contributing to the global illumination or not. So the global illumination is the bounces of light. So if I go into my render settings, I have it on. So every time I have my global illumination on and I give this a render, this light is going to be contributing and bouncing the light around the scene, and pretty much give you a brighter result. Without global illumination, it's going to be a little bit darker. The next thing we have show illumination. This is just showing you the outline of where your light is in the scene. So as you can see, if I turn it off, all we have is this little object here, this little shape, and if I turn it back on, we get an idea of how the light is affecting our objects. And the next three options, I wouldn't worry about it. I would just stick to the basics for now. So just remember, guys, this is the general tab is your intensity tab. This is where you control how intense you want your light to be and what color, and also you can turn on your shadows in here as well. So in our next tab, the detail, just think about it as the shape of the light. So this tab, takes care of the shape of the light that you're working on. So you have your outer radius, aspect ratio, and contrast. These three things control the shape of your light. You can control, how big or how small you want it to be. If you're going for something like candle, you can play around with aspect ratios. You can see it stretches the light and also flattens the light. So you can play around with those settings as well. And your contrast is obviously how your light is contributing to the contrast of overall in your scene. So you can also go negative. As you can see, it turns off the contrast in the light, and go positive. It can really blow out your scene. So just be careful with this option. And our next thing is the shape of the light. This is where you can decide, maybe I'm going for something like a light bulb, so you'll go for a sphere. Maybe I'm going for something like a lamp, you will go for a disc light, and so on. So this is a really important tab to play around, and keep that in mind. It depends what you're going for. You can change the shape of your light to anything you want. Also, you have this object tab, and this controls what kind of shape you want light to be. So you don't have to stick to the shapes they have pre-built in Cinema 4D. You can always drag in any shape in here, and it's going to act as a light source. But you have to make it editable first before you drag it in. So I just made it editable, and now if I go back to my details, go back to my object, I can drag it in, and this cube is going to be acting as my light source instead of being just an object in the scene. So let me just undo that and put it back to sphere. Okay, the next few options we have, you have control for your size, your X, Y, and Z. As you can see, you can get any size you want. You have full control. This is why I said the detail tab is kind of like your shape. You can shape your light the way you want it to. You have full control in here. And the next big thing to worry about is your fall off. You start off at none, which is your light doesn't have any fall off. It goes to infinite. But as soon as you take it on to inverse square, this is the most reliable option. It says here it's the most physically accurate, so I'll just stick to it. And what it does is, as soon as it hits these outlines of the light, it starts falling off into darkness. So as you can see, we have a radius and decay. So this is how you control where you want your light to be falling off. So if I bring it closer, see the light is barely touching the cube, or barely illuminating the cube. And if I go beyond, it really increases the intensity and the fall off radius. So let me just go back to what I had it. And the other options here, I wouldn't worry about it too much. Just stick to the basics. Like I said, you have your outer radius aspect ratio for your shape. You also have your X, Y, and Z to control the shape. You have your area shape, which is the actual shape of the light, sphere and so on. Your fall off, inverse square, and your radius. So this is all you have to worry about in this tab. And then the last thing is the shadow. You have a few different options here, you know, area shadow, ray trace, and so on. Just stick to area shadows is the most accurate and gives you the best results you can get. Don't worry about these two that much. They do save you some render time, but they don't really look that good and they give you a lot of noise. So just stick to area shadows is the best options. You have your density, which just controls the density of the light, how dark or how light you want it to be. Your color, if you want to get artistic, you can always change it to something else. You know, obviously the default is black, but you can change it to any color you want. And transparency is if you want your line to be transparent. And accuracy, minimum samples, maximum samples is the detail of the light. So if you give it a render and you see some noise in your lighting, you can always bump up the samples and it should clear it out for you. So these are the 3 tabs, guys, for beginners. If you guys want to get started lighting up your scenes, you have remember your intensity tab, your general tab. This is where you control your intensity. Detail is for shaping your light. You know what kind of shape do you want your light to look like, and your shadows is what kind of shadows, your density, the color, and so on. So if you're first starting out, just worry about these 3 tabs, and when you feel comfortable, you can always add caustics, add noise, lens effects, and so on. And in my next video, I'll be covering the 3-point lighting and showing you how I lit this scene that you see in front of me. Let me just give you a quick render to show you what it looks like. And for this scene, I only used area lights, and this is just an example of what you can do using area lights only. So let me just give it a render so you can see. Alright guys, so the render just finished, and this is the result we got. I was playing around with different lens effects, but it's really unnecessary. This is just to show you what you can do with area lights. So I have, you know, my main light is coming from the left, my fill light is coming from the right, and it's filling up the shadows, and I have my third light that's focusing on highlights or the speculars in the scene. So anyway, guys, thank you for watching this video on working with lights and the basic of lights. In my next video, I'll be covering 3-point lighting and different ways of lighting up your scene, and give you a rundown of this scene, how I lit it up, and how all the lights work together, you know, different ways of blending lights and playing with color, and so on. So if this video helped you, please leave a like, subscribe for more videos, and have a nice day.